97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan.
I have real confidence that our football operations can once again create a dominant football team.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
It is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelyle.back.com. Call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It drops every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. And, of course, Nick Sirianni spoke to the media today for the first time. And we'll bring Adam Caplan in from the Inside the Birds podcast and get his take on what we actually heard there. Because, Adam, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I think Laurie's still rambling.
Yeah, good to be with you guys. I was a little bit surprised that Laurie went on 16 minutes uninterrupted. That to me was not what I expected. Typically, opening remarks are 3 to 5 minutes at most, and then you hand it off to the new head coach. And by the way, this is interesting. The Texans press conference, right? The Eagles ended at 1 Eastern. The Texans started at 1 Eastern for David Culley, the former Eagles receivers coach, as the new Texas head coach. Cal McNair, their owner, talked maybe 3 minutes, but then they handed it off to the general manager. Did you find it interesting that Harry Roseman did not talk today?
I did. In fact, I said to Broads earlier, I said, they should have had, if you're going to have Laurie talk that long, all three of them. Now, it's hard because of this COVID situation and you're on a Zoom call if this was a normal time, would all three of them have been up at the podium with you guys in the room?
Yeah, funny, because that was someone remarked to me, it's really difficult to have a blind press conference when the people are not in front of you. He's in the auditorium, Nick Sirianni, and the people are not there. He's just looking at a screen. And it's more difficult. But listen, you're right. There's nothing anyone can do about it. That's the setup we have to have for COVID. But
what is it? Let me ask you, Adam. Is it a screen, like a drop down, a big screen, or is it just like, is he looking at like a laptop?
I heard it was a decent sized screen, but someone happened to say something to me about it. But look, the fact of the matter is, Mike, as much as I sometimes enjoy Jeffrey Lurie speaking, I don't think we needed 16 minutes without. And here's the other thing. Where were the follow-ups? Why couldn't the media ask questions to this guy? Oh, I didn't understand that. Another part of it, which I didn't understand. I'm not one who usually complains about this stuff, but I would have liked to, since Roseman was not available, why couldn't the reporters ask follow-ups?
Not only that, I said the same thing and I felt like why did they cut it short? It was like, what were you up against here? Who was throwing you out of was somebody booked? Other
than unless they were thinking nationally, because the Texans were starting their press conference at the same time at 1 o'clock. That's when the Eagles ended it. Sirianni got just under 45 minutes. Now, that's not a unreasonable amount of time, but remember the first 10 minutes or so, he was just thanking people.
Right. He went on an Academy Awards speech there and basically thanked everybody.
But look, it's typical that these head coaches do that. They want to thank all their friends and family and coaches and all that. But overall, being in these press conferences before and asking questions, I would have liked to. And I understand that you couldn't do it face to face. And as we get into this, as we break it down, there's some things that clearly should have been answered and were not. And I thought the media completely missed on some things today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What was your overall thought, though, of like the delivery and how he handled just from a delivery standpoint and like his message getting across?
Listen, Hunter, before we get into the Wentz stuff, because you know it was coming, and that was when Moshe and I dropped our show this morning, that was the first thing we predicted that would be asked. It's going to be all over it. The media was. That's their job. That's fine. The thing that you could tell is that he's got a ton of energy. This is something I've met him twice, in 18 and 19 in training camp with the Colts. I was able to talk to him after each training camp practice that I was at. And you could clearly see he's got a ton of energy. So much so in this press conference, guys, I thought he stumbled. He seemed a little bit tight, a little bit nervous. He needs to calm down a little bit. He'll get that the more press conferences that he does. It's not like he hadn't done any the past 3 years because the offensive coordinator for an NFL team must speak to the media. So I thought as it went along, though, he was more comfortable. He seemed a little bit, obviously, because at least half of the press conference dealt with the Wentz stuff. You could tell he either was prepped for it. He kind of knew it was coming. He had, I would think, somewhat rehearsed answers. And then obviously you had different follow-ups for it because people were out for blood. They wanted answers about who the quarterback's going to be. He did the best that he could to deflect it. I did find it was interesting that I find it hard to believe, but I have to believe the guy, that none of his coaches watch any tape on the Eagles. I find that hard to believe, but okay, they just got the job. So maybe they haven't.
Yeah, that was one of the things that stood out to me is you went to Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie during the interview and said, I don't know anything about your team. I haven't watched them. I don't know anything about the roster.
Well, look, Mike, I will say this about the Sirianni interview. It was not really, to begin the week, one that I thought they would be having. I thought they would have hired Brandon Staley or Arthur Smith. They didn't get to Brandon Staley. The Chargers interviewed him, so we'll never really know. And Arthur Smith, I know, knocked it out of the park, did a great job. The Eagles never offered him a deal. He went to the Falcons within 24 hours after his interview with the Eagles. And Nick Sirianni, I'm sure he was on their long list, which Jeffrey Lurie, I like that part of it. This is what I've heard about these interviews, Mike. You start with a list that's 25 to 30 people. It's just you brainstorm, okay, who do you like, who do you like, who do you like? Once you get through the vetting, you narrow it down to 10 or 15. As he said, I think he said 10 to 12. They wound up interviewing 10. Okay. That part of Jeffrey Lurie's, I like that part of it. I was glad that he did that. It brought you inside the interview. And by the way, we interviewed former Eagles president Joe Banner on Inside the Birds television this week. And I got to tell you, he took us through. Joe brought us through some stuff, which I'd never heard before, didn't know about in the interview process. So I hope you guys listen to it. You can find that on YouTube or on any podcasting platform.
Yeah, it was really kind of step-by-step what happens in a coaching interview. Really good on the Inside the Birds podcast. What about Sirianni was asked 5 different ways about Wentz. Staying, going, competition. He obviously, either one, didn't want to touch it, but I don't know that he was really prepped all that well for it.
Well, no, he knew it was coming, but because they kept asking the question a different way, Mike, as you said. What I would have liked him to have said, hey, if it's up to me, he's my quarterback. So,
well, that's not good either.
Well, listen.
What do you mean if it's up to me? Oh, because we all think that.
He's got to come up with some kind of answer that says, listen, I want to be our quarterback, but listen, we're evaluating this thing. I just got here.
Yeah.
And he goes, we'll say he's under contract. I expect him to be the starter. Just come up with something. I don't know if you're aware of this. Did you see what the Rams have said about Jared Goff?
Yeah.
They couldn't make it more clear. They don't want the guy. It's very clear. Here, they're kind of leaving it up to he may or may not stay in Carson Wentz.
That's right. I mean, you're right. And the way, we both, he's in a tough spot. He's thrown to the wolves here with this quarterback situation. He can't lean one way or the other because then he's kind of throwing Hurts out of the mix. But he was asked if there was a competition, and he didn't really say there's going to be a competition, but he didn't really say whether Wentz was going to be here. It just seemed like that he wanted nothing to do with that question, even though he kind of knew it was coming because he wouldn't say that whether it would be a quarterback competition. He just said, hey, we're looking over the whole roster. But that is going to be his defining moment, don't you think?
I was surprised he said that because sometimes, Mike, and I'll give the media credit for this, the more you ask the same question, every once in a while you might get something, whoa, I didn't expect him to say that. He just gave us a nugget. You're right on that one. I did notice that, and I was surprised that he said that. My read on this thing, the Wentz situation's fluid. Though we reported on Inside a couple weeks ago, just about every head coaching candidate was not only asked about Carson Wentz, how would you redevelop the player? How would you coach him? How would you handle the quarterback situation? They were asked this. So clearly it's in their mind to potentially bring him back. He's under contract. But you also have to look at it and say, they've never guaranteed that Wentz will be back. That's a fact. They've never guaranteed it. It's an ongoing situation.
Something that stood out to me, he was asked if he was going to call the plays, and he said he was, but he also said that there were some discussions about maybe just being the CEO of the team and maybe not. Is that interesting to you to hear him say that?
Yeah, what happens is in every head coaching interview, if your guy's called plays before, well, you're actually going to be asked it regardless. Who's going to call plays? What's the process? Sirianni, typically the what we call non-play calling offensive coordinators, typically help in red zone or on third down. They either are the ones who call it or say, hey, they design it. That's typically what they do, Hunter. So when you fast forward this to Sirianni, the word was coming into this that he was going to call the plays. That was never a surprise. But it's just the process. And Sirianni was Frank Reich's right-hand man. He's heavily involved in game planning. That's what a non-play calling OC should be doing. Now, for the first time in his career, he's going to call the plays. But his right-hand man, as we reported last Friday on Inside the Birds, is Kevin Patullo. We knew he was coming in to be his right-hand man. He'll be his passing game coordinator. Really integral to his staff to be on there. And those guys, by the way, they flew over together on the private plane on whenever he got in here, Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, Monday, I think, to arrive at Philly.
Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. Of course, the new coach, Nick Sirianni, met the media today. He did have some very glowing remarks about, number one, his defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon. And also, a lot of people are very happy about Brian Johnson, the hire for the quarterback coach.
Yeah, and the thing is, you never really know who recommends these coaches. I know in 2016, Doug Peterson had a bunch of coaches recommended to him, guys who are currently on the staff, then like Jeff Stoutland and others, and he decided, you know what, I interviewed these guys, I liked them, I'm going to retain them. Here, as I understand it, Sirianni, his idea was most of the staff. I don't know that it was all of his idea, not that it really matters much. The bottom line is it's his decision who he hires. He can hire whoever he wants. Brian Johnson was a guy that was a tremendous hire. If you talk to people around the league, especially people in the coaching community, they speak very high of the 33-year-old coach. It's going to come here and be the quarterback's coach. Johnson was at University of Florida. That's a primetime program. He was the OC/quarterbacks coach, and I guess the big story is that he recruited Jalen Hurts out of high school, which is a very interesting aside. I don't know if they're connected. No one has said it hasn't been, but the fact of the matter is, and all that matters is, he's a really, really good quarterback developer. He did a great job with Dak Prescott, among others. Speaking
of which, by the way, Press Taylor has just been hired by Frank Reich. So maybe Jeffrey Lurie will say, no, we want him back now.
Yeah, right. Look, Press Taylor, it wasn't working here. It was never going to work here. He got too close to Wentz. We outlined this now for 3 years, and good for him, nice guy. And what's interesting there is, Mike, the Colts have no idea who their quarterback is. Philip Rivers is retiring. They have one quarterback under contract, and that's a fourth rounder.
That's interesting.
Jacob Easton. Yeah, so they need a quarterback, so that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, and Adam, not to go down the road of all these teams need quarterbacks, but New Orleans, maybe Pittsburgh, most likely you're going to need one in Indianapolis, as you said, most likely going to need one in Detroit, possibly Houston. A lot of quarterbacks are going to be needed. Where does Wentz fall on that pecking order if the Eagles even think about moving him? Because there's so many options.
Right, and the cap situation, it's a cap burden on that. They already have a bad cap situation. This would make it worse. The way it was explained to me recently is look, they can make it work with help from Wentz, but it still be painful. It's just about how painful do they want it to be. There are so many quarterbacks. I've been doing this study for almost 3 weeks now. There are easily 16 teams, half the league, that has no idea who their starting quarterback is going to be. I don't know and by the way, the Eagles are within those 16. They don't know that Wentz is going to be the quarterback. They got to get through the situation. If he was, Mike, they would have said it. Teams don't let speculation happen. They let speculation take place for a reason. Nick Sirianni, the GM of the Texans, said he has no interest in trading Deshaun Watson. All he had to say is we're not trading him. That would have ended it, but he didn't do that because he's not sat down with Watson yet, and he has to see if the situation could be resolved to be able to make the guy happy. We'll see.
You mentioned Patullo earlier as the right-hand man, and I wonder what can we expect from Shane Steichen as the offensive coordinator and what he brings to the table?
Yeah, Steichen did a great job with Justin Herbert, the Chargers' then rookie quarterback, their first-round pick, 6th overall. Did a really good job. And in the pandemic offseason, which meant no offseason, and a couple weeks of training camp, no preseason, did a great job. I know the Charger fans on message boards really criticized the offense the final 4 or 5 games, but part of it was because Keenan Allen got hurt. They had a bunch of injuries on their offensive line. They got a little bit conservative. Some people blame Anthony Lynn for that, who ironically now is calling plays for the Lions, so you can call it what it is. But he's very close to the new head coach Sirianni. He's gone through developing a quarterback. That's huge. If it's Jalen Hurts who he has to develop or another young quarterback, at least he's gone and done it. So that's important. And not every coach that Sirianni hired is someone from his background. The other thing is there's some positions that still need to be hired to be filled. Jason Michael is going to be their tight ends coach. We first said that on our show last Friday, that he's on his list. He got him, though I don't know that he was going to stay with the Colts or not, because he took the same tight ends job with the Eagles that he had with the Colts. So it's a little bit interesting. But look, there are a bunch of guys also who know him very well, and they've got to prove themselves. And look, this is a relatively young staff. I'm interested to see if there are any veteran coaches who are hired in the near future.
Okay, so Adam Caplan's with us, and there were so many questions that I was looking for answers to, and I get it. There was only a limited amount of time, but a lot of these roster decisions, and the left tackle spot. You got a former first-round pick here. You got a seventh-rounder that played last year. Is that a spot that you're looking at in the draft? So is left tackle between Dillard and Mailata? Are they thinking about that at number 6 if there's someone there?
Yeah, and that's for Roseman, right? That's not something he's going to be able to answer. That one I understand.
Right, yeah, and I'm saying for him, but I'm wondering if, he said I haven't looked at the roster or anything, but if he comes in thinking, hey, Dillard was a first-round pick, I got to take a look at this guy. We don't want to draft another left tackle.
Right, but I would have liked to have known, Mike, is he familiar with Jordan Mailata? Because Mailata's an unbelievable story of development. I know that in his interview, I'd heard that in his interview with the Eagles, he did talk about player development, which is, by the way, very important. It's not talked about enough. But I could tell you that one of the things that bothered me about this press conference is how in the world did they not ask about, okay, Deuce Staley's gone. Who's your running backs coach? What's the status of Aaron Moorhead?
Yeah.
What's the status of you don't have a special teams coach? Who's your linebacker coach? What are you going to do with Matt Burke? What are you going to do with Marquand Manuel, the DB's coach? Moshe reported on Friday that Tim Houck won't be retained, their safeties coach. So how in the world do you not ask these questions? It's just beyond me. That would be my one strong criticism. Because, by the way, they asked the right question on Wentz, and I have no problem with the follow-ups. After that, shut it down, start asking about the coaches. That was a real faux pas by the media here.
Yeah, and also the fact that, we're in a situation where he essentially – look, I don't have a problem with his delivery or any of these things. I'm not judging him on that. But he had a really good chance to kind of get people excited. And I think people go into this all season with so much uncertainty. You know what I mean?
Sure. No, listen, the quarterback thing is obviously number one, and everything else is 2, 3, 4, and 5. But it's number one there. He talked a little bit about how players might be used, but not a lot. He did a really good interview with Dave Sparrow from PhiladelphiaEagles.com. If you haven't seen it, he did talk a little bit about it there with Dave. But you're right. There are a ton of questions to be answered. And the next time they're going to get him would be at the owners' meetings, but we don't know if there's going to be an owners' meetings like we normally would have it, where we get to sit down with the head coaches of all 32 teams.
Yeah.
I remember asking Chip Kelly. I'll never forget it. I'm sitting right next to him at his first owners' meetings in 13. Said, was it your dream to be an NFL head coach? He looked deadpans me. He goes, absolutely not. And I was like taken aback. I was so shocked at his answer. I was stunned. I didn't even have a follow up. I couldn't believe he said that.
Wow. How did you process when he mentioned Howie Roseman having his fingerprints on the 53-man roster, and then he said, I believe I have say on the 47-man, as if that was never discussed?
Yeah, well, no, of course it was discussed. Almost every head coach controls the game day roster. It's rare in today's NFL that they don't. But typically, general managers like Roseman, who have full personnel control free agency, the draft, the 53-man roster, and that's pretty much it. And and then the game day roster is usually the head coaches. And what happens is on Saturday night, if they have a Sunday game, they meet with the general manager and the personnel director, and they go over who are going to be the inactives the next day and what the game plan is in terms of personnel. And that's it. Yeah, that's what I expect him to say. I'm glad he actually addressed it instead of. I wasn't sure because I don't know this guy really. I was surprised he actually confirmed that. That was good that he did that. Good question, by the way.
And by the way, coming up next week, a guy who played for Nick Sirianni, Anthony Becht, will be on the show. He was with him in Kansas City. So Anthony texted me today. He said, yeah, I know Nick. I played for him. He's going to join us next week on the show to give us some more insight what it's like playing for him, so we'll get a player's perspective. Adam Caplan. By the way, on that interview with Spadaro, he mentioned Ertz and the potential of having Ertz, which I thought was kind of interesting to say.
I would be very, I as I said on Inside the Birds, this today, when we're talking about the roster. We were talking about 12 versus 11. There's some bad information out there, so I had to kind of shoot it down on what happens. A bunch of the local media watched that 5-minute video clip that Sirianni did for the Colts website. One guy tried to act like he was reporting that he heard they were going to run 12 personnel, and I was told pretty strongly by someone who coached with Sirianni with the Colts that that's not correct. So I got the information. I put it on our show. I didn't want to take a shot at the reporter. I wouldn't name him. But it's just, you can't go by what you see in a video, man. That's just not good reporting. I thought that was comical. Anyway.
All right, Adam Caplan, the Inside the Birds podcast. Check out their thoughts on Nick Sirianni. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Drop 6 a.m. all off season long. The best Eagles insight on the podcast and right here during Football at 4. He's Adam Caplan. This is Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Adam, have a great weekend, man.
Thank you, guys.
All right, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And, of course, Adam will be back on Friday. Jeff Mosher will be here on Monday, and we will get ready for the Super Bowl.